Fintech Fest 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, as we transition and segue into our next fireside chat, I'd like to bring to core that innovation is always a driving force, be it in the aspect of life or when we discuss the new advances which enable us to balance financials that have actually revolutionized the spending patterns in corporate world and businesses alike. To understand more about the aspects of corporate spend management and beyond banking and cash building it first, we have our moderator for the session, Mr. Amol Dethe, editor, etbfsi.com and etcfo.com. And joining him on stage would be our speaker, Mr. Hemant Vishnoi, who is the founder at EnKash. So give them a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I Am I audible? I just want you to thumbs up if I'm audible. Thank you so much, and glad to see all of you here. Just to share before we begin that the team PCI, IMAI, and the Fintech Convergence Council was trying to build this GFF since really long time, and glad to see this is happening in person. So first, welcome to the maskless world, and it's glad to see all of you. And it's really glad to see a big event like this happening in India on the scale of maybe Singapore FinTech Festival or Money 2020 in India. Coming back to the topic, I'm sure being a FinTech festival, we have a lot of sessions lined up here specifically on the FinTech side. But this is a little different topic because in India, we have been talking a lot specifically about the payment in the retail space. But the space specifically towards corporate side is a little untouched. Not many players are operating on that side, and this is going to be an interesting space going ahead. And I have with me Hemant Vishnoi, the founder of EnKash, going to give us some perspective in terms of how this space is going to shape up. So the topic of this particular discussion is corporate spend management and beyond banking, and how is EnKash actually building it first. So Hemant, glad to have you here, and would like you to share your perspective, give more examples and perspectives so that the people at large could understand in a far more detailed manner in terms of how the corporate spend is shaping up in India. So to begin with, why don't you just give us a brief about how the corporate spend management is today? What's the difference that is needed to make in this space? What exactly you are doing? If you could share your own case study or give some examples.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks, Amol. I hope I'm audible, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks. Uh, so essentially, if we are talking about corporate spend management, it's more related to towards commercial payments or business payments. People are kind of often confused between when we talk about spend management. It's more related towards expense management. But when we are talking about corporate spend management, it actually includes expense management. Uh, when we are talking about corporate spend management, it takes care of overall overview of all the revenues of the company and the outings of that company. It takes care of the whole cash flow position of the company, and then it essentially provides a better fund management per se, by also taking care of audit and compliance trails. So essentially, in short, expense management. If we're talking about corporate spend management, it's kind of include it's expense management is a kind of tiny layer. If we talk about overall payables and expenses of the company, and then it's kind of different from neobank kind of approach where we don't open business accounts. We do not disrupt existing banking relationship, internal processes, internal softwares and all. We integrate them all, and then we don't kind of create a friction for any business when they are talking about managing corporate spends.
Okay, got some interesting perspective from you, Hemant. But considering the changes that is happening in this space, considering this space need to evolve. One is how do you see this space is going to evolve in maybe next 3 to 4 years? Considering people are now looking at corporate spend management, and I was just trying to exchange a notes before our conversation that even my company is trying to give me a prepaid coupon for the cab, so that the whole reimbursement process, the spend, the expense, everything will be seamless, right? And a lot of companies have been offering such initiatives and taking proactive approach. So how do you see this space shaping up maybe in next 2 to 3 years?
So the problem of spend management is quite old, and then it's getting complex day by day. Considering that how businesses are deciding to purchase in a decentralized way, and considering that more and more businesses are actually requiring softwares to touching their all parts of operations. Uh, as we progress, and considering more spenders and more variety of spends, it is going to become harder and harder. And that is why if you are looking at global corporate spend management fintechs or companies like us, we are kind of trying to take a holistic view when it comes to managing the company spends or expenses. Uh, Essentially, one important part here is that it's kind of also important to note that the way consumer payments have evolved in last 1.5 decades, business payments actually lack those kind of innovation. If we talk about our own country's payment infrastructure, uh, uh, I mean it has actually taken the edge over others when it comes to when the consumer is actually paying to the merchant. But when we talk about business payments or commercial payments, they are typically high value transactions, right? Now on the consumer payment side, the customer has option to pay via UPI, have option via to pay cards or net banking. But when we are talking about business payments, high value transactions, UPI won't work. Net banking was, was there from last 1.5 decade. It was launched for retail payments with some patches. It was offered to the businesses. It's kind of cumbersome to operate on net banking by any business. So essentially, what is left is your cards. And cards, if we're talking about, card is actually the most flexible, secured and fast payment instrument as compared to any other one. And then that is where it can actually take care of both retail as well as business payments. And that is where when it is kind of card is creating a digital value chain for business payments. It essentially is going to evolve over the period of time in combination of a platform and a card. So I think both on the global side as well as Indian side, the companies have adopted company cards to be issued to businesses. The reason is very, very simple, basis on how cards can actually handle large value of or large volume of transactions.
Okay, so but do you see only the corporate or the businesses will go for card more, or is there any other UPI movement which we can see?
So I think when we are talking about in the current payment infrastructure, definitely there is a need to relook at how the payment infrastructure is built, right? As of now, business payments are kind of untouched. So as of now, if we're talking about creating a digital value chain, I think company cards are best placed. Tomorrow, definitely we need to have better solutions around it. For example, if we are talking about business payments, uh, considering the kind of volume and the size of the commercial payments or business payments are there, typical current payment instruments can't actually handle that.
Right. So then, just for more better understanding, why don't you maybe share a case study or give us more example in terms of how are you actually working with some business? I'm sure you are working with a lot of corporates. So how do you actually deal with corporates? What kind of partnerships have you made with him? How the actual works? How it processes at Encash? How is it?
I think one of the examples, and there are multiple examples. One of the examples is that let's say if you are a business having multiple offices across cities, right? Now, if you want to decentralize your business payments to those local cities, and apart from that, you also want to have control, visibility at a central office. You have three options, right? I mean, if you're talking about three options in terms of paying by a bank transfer. The second option is paying via check, and the third option is cards. Right now, if we are talking about check, they are slow. There is no real-time reporting, and the process of reconciliation is completely manual. Right? If you're talking about bank transfers, for example, right? Typically, net banking is out of question. Bank transfers, if we are talking about, you have two options, right? Either you can create multiple bank accounts across the cities.
Right.
Then again, the problem will be that the reporting will be manual. There'll be no real time visibility, and reconciliation will again be based on the manual efforts. The other option on the bank transfers is you can create multiple users on the same parent account, right? Now, again, the challenge there is that you are giving access to your parent account to multiple users. So, it's essentially you are actually risking your system, right? So, essentially, and there also, the reporting is again, manual. It's a file-based bank transfer. Reporting will always be on manual side with no real-time visibility. Now, compare it with cards, right? And especially, and cards with the digital value chain which we have created, right? Now you can actually offer a multiple child card to your local offices, which are kind of connected to your central parent card account, right? You can allocate limits on those cards. They can actually provide. You can also provide budgets on those cards. They can pay it via platform like us. They can do vendor payments. They can do bill payments. They can do tax payments. They can manage their expenses all in one go. The central team is having a real-time visibility. There is no manual reconciliation. It's automated reconciliation, and there is a control and transparency on the entire payments value chain. So this is one of the examples. There could be other example also that in a business, let's say you are a business and having multiple departments, and multiple departments want to spend on multiple various softwares, and each department, typically in any business, there is always a budget which is being provided to any particular department. In a normal environment, there will always be a communication between a department head and the finance team about allocating certain budget, and then subsequently the budget is getting spent. The reconciliation goes back to finance team. There are multiple such kind of reconciliation reports which are being provided to the bank, to the finance team. Imagine a situation if where you can again issue multiple cards to various departments, assign a budget on that. Finance team will have a central visibility. Department heads can spend as per their budgets, and the entire value chain is completely real time. So there are multiple examples where the flexibility when it comes to a spend management platform and cards, if we compare it with the normal environment, there are a lot of advantages which actually comes into it.
So basically, if you go for office party and maybe some leader who have to pay from his own pocket, he doesn't need to preserve that bill invoice. By any chance, if he loses the bill, then the party is on him and not on the team, because the company will look for that bill, right, invoice to pay. But let me shift your focus on the regulatory side, because the regulators are very active. We can see what's happening in the digital lending side. Everyone thought that lending is the next business shaping up, but suddenly the regulator came with a big whip and trying to be put a lot of compliance on that side. On the payment side, what kind of compliance do you see happening in this space? Because recently there are many conversations around digital banking or even open banking, and the regulator also came up with the digital banking unit framework. So how are you seeing this managing the payment and banking?
So I think when we are talking about DBO framework, it's a very very welcoming step from the regulator, right? Essentially, when we are talking about the idea about DBO, the idea here is to actually provide a digital experience, right, to all the customers of all banks, right? Right now, if you look at the current environment, there are only fewer banks who are actually providing a digital experience, and that too in a limited capacity. It's a great opportunity for both fintechs as well as banks to partner. Regulator has also come up and emphasized on the that kind of partnership to be established between between fintechs as well as banks, right? Essentially, if you have to provide a digital experience, then definitely on the experience and the infrastructure behind that needs to be very, very agile and nimble, right? And then in that context, if you look at the legacy systems, they are heavy and loaded, right? You can't change it after a while, right? And in that situation, if we are talking about such kind of partnerships where fintechs, multiple fintechs are actually partnering with a bank with multiple products and multiple solutions, the entire ecosystem will be agile and nimble, right? And that is where I actually see it a great opportunity for fintech, especially for business payments also. Reason is simple that not much has happened on the business payment side, and there is a lot which we have to do. We should be doing it, and we should actually make it frictionless, as seamless as the consumer to merchant payments are.
Quite meaningful, Hemant. Let me add, I wanted to little bit add more on the global solutions. I think this can be the last question, and I will see whether I can take maybe one question from the audience. So, are global solutions applicable to India? Because now when you talk about cross-border, when you talk about connecting boundaries and, sharing all those things. So how different is it? So are global solutions applicable to India as well? And is it different, and how the Indian fintech are going to take it up?
See, I mean, there are many problems when it comes to business payments, which are kind of common across the markets, right? For example, if you are talking about any business uh, who wants to, mitigate fraud risk, right? That's kind of, common. If some business wants to mitigate manual processing of payables, that's kind of, common across the globe. If someone wants to have better and faster processing, that's kind of, common to all the markets. But there'll be certain, market specific challenges which needs to be solved basis the market. But having said so, if we are talking about especially, payment infrastructure, as I said earlier, more or less, the challenges around business payments is same across the market. If we are talking about again, from when the customer is actually, paying to any merchant, merchant can actually accept digital payments. But when we are talking about business payments, both sides, buyers and sellers, or either side of them, could be digitally primitive. So essentially, that's where when we are talking about the solutioning part, right? We need to think around and we need to actually take a holistic view around it for business payments. Uh, when we are talking about spend management companies or fintechs globally or in India, right, company like us, we are actually solving and taking it in a different way, right? And as I mentioned that company cards are best placed to solve it because they are kind of flexible enough and secure enough. But essentially good part here is that probably in the history of Indian fintech, uh, we are actually seeing solutioning and products coming both at the global stage as well as in India in parallel, as compared to what exactly has happened in the past.
Oh, quite interesting. I think some meaningful thoughts from you, Hemant, I must say. I think I still have 2 minutes. Maybe I can take one quick question if anyone has here. Can I take one quick question if anyone has here on this particular topic? Okay, no, no, not an issue. I think so. Just last one quickly, Hemant. I want you to add. A lot of race is specifically into the payment space right now, and the fintechs which could not do well into payment space shifted to the lending space. What do you suggest? Is there a bigger scope in the corporate spend management, specifically managing the global payments and the business payments for the fintechs going ahead? And do you think that this business model can be a sustainable and a profitable business model for the fintechs?
As I said that nothing much has happened on the business payment side, right? And if we are talking about from an Indian context, right? It's a more than $1 trillion market as far as India is concerned. And when we are talking about company cards, the total market which can be addressed via company cards is a $5 billion, which essentially means that there is enough lunch on the table. There are more guests required in the space to come and disrupt, right? And essentially, we are actually welcoming a lot of people, right? I mean, I think that there are many companies which need to come in this space. It's a sustainable model because it's ample is there for everyone to solve. It's just a matter of time.
Oh, absolutely. I think if by any chance if they could at least the MDR and other things are not still happening in this space, so maybe it could be a sustainable and maybe a profitable business model for fintechs because not many hands are are into this lake right now. So that's it from my side, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for listening to us very patiently, and thank you Hemant for sharing your views on the corporate spend management. Thank you so much and enjoy the GFF.
Thank you, Amol. Thanks, GFF.